The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across my mother's face as she raised her wine glass, her perfectly manicured nails catching the light. I stood frozen in my childhood living room, surrounded by relatives who'd gathered for our annual Thanksgiving dinner. My sister Madison sat at the head of the table, her designer suit still crisp after a full day radiating the success that had always made her our mother's pride and joy. To Madison, my mother Patricia announced, her voice dripping with adoration, partner at 32, the youngest in her firm's history. Everyone raised their glasses, everyone except me. My mother's gaze found mine and her expression shifted. That familiar sneer curved her lips. You'll never be as good as your sister Amber. Something inside me shattered. 3 years of silence. 3 years of secret payments. 3 years of being compared and found wanting while I kept our mother afloat. I pushed back my chair and stood. Then ask her to pay your bills. The room went silent. 6 months before that Thanksgiving confrontation, I was sitting at my kitchen table at 5 a.m, paying bills before my shift at the hospital. The stack included my own modest expenses for my 1-bedroom apartment, and then there was the second pile, my mother's mortgage statement, her utility bills, 3 maxed-out credit cards, and a past-due notice for her car payment. I worked as a pediatric nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, and while the job fulfilled me in ways I couldn't describe, it didn't make me rich, especially not rich enough to support 2 households. But there I was, transferring another $2,000 to my mother's account, watching my savings dwindle to nothing. The irony wasn't lost on me. Madison lived in a glass-walled penthouse in the most expensive part of the city, drove a car that cost more than I made in 2 years, and vacationed in places I'd only seen in magazines. Yet somehow I was the one keeping our mother from foreclosure. It had started 3 years ago, just after Dad left. The divorce had been brutal, and Mom called me crying about losing the house. Madison had been too busy with a major case to even answer her phone, so I stepped up thinking it would be temporary, just a few months to help her get back on her feet. Those months turned into years, and the requests grew larger. First, it was just the mortgage. Then utilities got added. Then her credit cards because she'd maxed them out, trying to maintain appearances. She always had a reason, always had an explanation that ended with a subtle jab about how Madison would be so disappointed if she knew their mother was struggling. I thought about my childhood as I sealed the last envelope. Madison had been the star from day one. Straight A's came effortlessly to her while I struggled to maintain B's despite studying twice as hard. She was tall and willowy like Mom, while I inherited Dad's shorter, sturdier frame. She chose law school. I chose nursing. In Mom's eyes, that was where I went wrong. "Nursing is noble," she'd said when I graduated, "but it's not exactly prestigious, is it? Not like having a daughter who argues cases in front of judges." Every family gathering followed the same script. Mom would spend hours detailing Madison's latest accomplishments, while dismissing my work with phrases like, "Amber's still at the hospital," or "Amber's doing her little nursing thing." The fact that I held crying children through chemotherapy, that I'd been commended 5 times for exceptional patient care, that families requested me specifically, none of that measured up to Madison's billable hours. I was reaching for my car keys when my phone buzzed. A text from my credit card company about unusual activity. My hands shook as I logged into my account. There it was, a $1,500 charge at the Rivers Casino, posted just hours after I'd transferred money to Mom. My stomach churned as I scrolled through previous statements with fresh eyes. How had I missed this small charges, at first hidden between groceries and gas? Then larger ones, cash advances, ATM withdrawals at casino addresses. I called my bank immediately, my voice trembling as I requested copies of my mother's account statements. the account I'd been given access to for emergency deposits. What they sent made my blood run cold. For 3 years, I'd been funding a lie. The statements showed a clear pattern my deposits would hit, and within days, large cash withdrawals would follow. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the regular deposits from another source, $15,000 a month labeled Whitman Family Trust. Dad was paying her substantial alimony, more than enough to cover all her expenses and then some. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot staring at the papers until my shift supervisor called, wondering where I was. The morning sun climbed higher, and with it came a clarity that made me sick. My mother hadn't needed my money. She'd wanted it. Wanted it so she could gamble away Dad's payments while maintaining her image as the wronged divorcee who kept it all together. But why ask me? Why not Madison with her 6-figure salary and bonuses that could buy small houses? The answer came as I walked through the hospital doors, passing a photo of our nursing staff on the wall. Because Madison would have asked questions. Madison would have demanded documentation. Madison would have said no. But Amber, good, reliable, desperate to please Amber. She'd hand over her last dollar if it meant 5 minutes of her mother's approval. I made it through my shift on autopilot, my mind racing through every conversation, every guilt trip, every manipulation I'd been too blind to see. During my lunch break, I did something I'd never done before. I calculated exactly how much money I'd given my mother over 3 years. $73,000. $73,000 that could have been a house down payment. That could have been a wedding. That could have been the family Derek and I talked about starting. Instead, it had vanished into slot machines and poker tables while my mother played the victim and I played the fool. That evening, I sat in my apartment surrounded by 3 years of bank statements, text messages, and emails. The evidence painted a picture I'd been too close to see. Every request for money coincided with Madison's visits home. Every emergency happened right before a family gathering. My mother had been using my money to keep up appearances specifically for Madison, maintaining the illusion of the successful divorcee who needed nothing from her golden child. I picked up my phone to call Madison, then set it down. What would I say? That I'd been an idiot, that our mother had played me for 3 years while she lived her perfect life untouched by family drama? No. If I was going to confront this, I needed more than bank statements. I needed to understand the full scope of my mother's deception. And I needed to figure out why my successful sister had never once offered to help with what she must have assumed were our mother's legitimate struggles. The pieces of a larger puzzle were scattered before me, and I was finally ready to put them together. What I would discover in the coming months would shatter every illusion I had about my family and force me to confront truths that had been hiding in plain sight. As I filed away the bank statements, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Sweetie, small problem with the electricity bill this month. Can you help? Don't mention it to Madison when she visits next week. You know how she worries." For the first time in 3 years, I didn't immediately reach for my checkbook. Instead, I stared at the message, seeing it for what it really was. Another manipulation, another test of my compliance, another reminder that in my mother's eyes, my only value was in what I could provide. Change was coming. I just didn't know yet how explosive it would be. The country club gleamed like a palace against the September sunset, its manicured gardens and valet-parked luxury cars setting the stage for Madison's 30th birthday celebration. I'd driven 40 minutes after a 12-hour shift, still wearing my only designer dress, a 3-year-old purchase from a clearance rack that I hoped would help me blend in with Madison's crowd. The ballroom had been transformed into what looked like a wedding reception. Gold and crystal everywhere, fresh orchids on every table, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. the banner reading, "Congratulations, Madison, partner at 30, stretched across the entire back wall. Of course, this wasn't just a birthday party. It was a celebration of her latest achievement, another milestone for Mom to showcase. I found my assigned seat at a table near the back, surrounded by distant cousins and family friends who barely acknowledged my arrival. At the head table, Madison held court in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary, laughing with senior partners from her firm, while Mom hovered nearby playing the role of proud mother to perfection. "Patricia, you must be so proud," I heard one of the partners say. "2 successful daughters." Mom's laugh tinkled like broken glass. "Oh, Madison's the success story. Amber does her little nursing job. She's always been more comfortable with simple work. Not everyone can handle the pressure of corporate law." The words stung, but what hurt more was Madison's silence. She just smiled and changed the subject to her latest case victory. I spent the next hour watching my mother work the room, telling everyone about Madison's accomplishments, her penthouse, her European vacations. When someone occasionally asked about me, Mom's response was always the same. "Amber, oh, she's here somewhere, still doing the hospital thing." The hospital thing. Where last week I'd held a 6-year-old's hand as she took her first steps after spinal surgery. Where yesterday I'd been specifically requested by a family because their son trusted no other nurse. Where I'd won the Florence Nightingale Award for Excellence just 2 months ago. Not that I'd told my family. What was the point? Dinner was a 5-course affair that probably cost more than my monthly contribution to Mom's bills. I pushed food around my plate, checking my phone for the time. I'd switched shifts with a colleague to be here, and I had to be back at the hospital by 6 the next morning. "Leaving already." Mom's voice cut through my thoughts as I quietly gathered my purse. She'd appeared at my elbow, her expression already disapproving. "Dinner isn't even finished." "I have an early shift tomorrow," I explained softly. "Pediatric ICU. I really need to—" "Typical." Her voice rose just enough for nearby tables to hear. "Your sister's biggest celebration, and you can't even stay for dessert. This is why Madison succeeds Amber. She understands commitment. She prioritizes family." The irony of her words, speaking about family commitment to the daughter who'd been paying her bills in secret, made my chest tight. "Mom, I switched shifts just to be here. I have sick children who need—" "There's always an excuse, isn't there?" She turned to address the watching crowd. "I apologize for Amber. She's never understood the importance of supporting her sister. Too wrapped up in her own little world." Madison appeared, then placing a hand on Mom's arm. "It's fine, Mother. Amber has responsibilities." But her tone was dismissive, already turning back to her friends before I could respond. I stood there invisible in a room full of people celebrating my sister, while my mother shook her head in theatrical disappointment. I made it to the parking lot before the tears came. Sitting in my 10-year-old Honda between Mercedes and BMWs, I let myself feel the full weight of it. 3 years of sacrifice, and I was still the disappointment. Still the afterthought. Still not enough. I was about to drive away when I realized I'd left my wrap inside. The September evening had turned cool, and I'd need it for my shift tomorrow. Reluctantly, I walked back through the service entrance to avoid the main ballroom. The catering hallway was empty except for the distant clatter of dishes. As I approached the coat room, I heard a familiar voice through the thin wall. Madison on the phone, her tone sharp and irritated. "I don't care what she told you, Dad. I'm not getting involved. Yes, I know about the gambling problem. Of course I know she's broke. Why do you think I stay away?" I froze my hand on the door handle. "Look," Madison continued. "Amber's already handling it. She's been paying Mom's bills for years. No, I never offered. Why would I? She seems happy to play the martyr. Honestly, it works out perfectly. Mom gets her money, Amber gets to feel needed, and I don't have to deal with any of it. My knees nearly buckled. She knew. This whole time she knew. The trust fund. Madison laughed, but it was bitter. Mom burns through 15 grand a month at the casino. I tracked it once. Yeah, Amber's money goes straight to the tables too. But hey, if my bleeding heart sister wants to enable Mom's addiction while I build my career, who am I to interfere? I heard footsteps approaching and quickly grabbed my wrap, ducking into an alcove as Madison passed, still on the phone. I've got to go, Dad. Big party, remember, the kind Amber could never afford to throw. What? No, I'm not going to tell her. If she's too naive to figure it out, that's her problem. I've got a partnership to focus on. I waited until her footsteps faded, then stumbled out to my car. My hands shook so badly I had to try 3 times to get the key in the ignition. Everything made sense now. Madison's distance wasn't just about her career, it was calculated. She knew about Mom's addiction, knew I was being drained dry, and had deliberately chosen to let me handle it alone. The drive home blurred through tears and rage. All those family dinners where Madison sat silent while Mom compared us. All those times she'd been too busy to visit, too occupied to call. It wasn't neglect. It was strategy. I pulled into my apartment complex as my phone buzzed with texts from the party. Pictures of Madison's cake cutting, of Mom's glowing speech about her successful daughter. In every photo, there was an empty chair at the back table where I'd been sitting. Already erased, already forgotten. But I wouldn't forget what I'd heard. My sister, my successful, brilliant sister, had thrown me to the wolves to protect her own interests. She'd watched me drown while keeping her designer shoes dry. That night, I lay awake replaying every interaction from the past 3 years with new understanding. Madison's convenient absences during Mom's crises. Her vague responses when I'd mentioned helping Mom through her difficult time. The way she'd immediately change the subject if I brought up family finances. She'd known I was enabling Mom's gambling, known I was destroying my own future, and she'd let it happen because it kept her free to build her perfect life. The sun was rising by the time exhaustion finally took me. My last thought before sleep was that I now had 2 problems instead of 1. A mother who saw me as an ATM and a sister who was perfectly content to watch me burn as long as the smoke didn't touch her reputation. The game had more players than I'd realized, and I'd been the only one who didn't know the rules. Uncle Robert's house sat on a quiet street in the suburbs, a modest brick home that had always felt more welcoming than my mother's perfectly decorated showplace. 2 months after Madison's party, I finally worked up the courage to seek his help. As my father's brother and a retired accountant, he was the only family member I trusted to give me honest advice. I rang the doorbell on a Sunday afternoon, my laptop bag heavy with 3 years of financial records. Robert answered immediately, his kind face creasing with concern when he saw my expression. "Amber, sweetheart, what's wrong?" He ushered me into his study, a comfortable room lined with books and family photos. "You sounded upset on the phone." I couldn't meet his eyes as I unpacked my laptop and files. "I need your help understanding something. It's about Mom." For the next hour, I laid out everything. The payment history, the casino charges, the discovery of the alimony Madison's overheard conversation. Robert's expression grew increasingly grave as he reviewed the documents, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "Dear God," he finally said, removing his reading glasses. $73,000, Amber, your entire retirement savings. Gone, I confirmed, my voice hollow. My emergency fund, too. I've been living paycheck to paycheck for 3 years, while apparently Mom gets $15,000 a month from Dad. Robert stood abruptly and walked to his filing cabinet. "There's something you need to see." He pulled out a thick folder labeled Patricia Estate Matters and returned to his desk. I've been keeping records hoping I'd never need to share them. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, and printed emails dating back 5 years. Your grandmother left your mother $400,000 when she passed, Robert said quietly. I was the co-executor of the estate. The money was transferred to Patricia 5 years ago. I stared at the inheritance documents, my mind struggling to process the numbers. But she told me she was broke after the divorce, that Dad left her with nothing. Keep reading, Robert said gently. The next set of documents made my stomach turn. Casino Reward Club statements showing platinum member status, credit applications listing gambling losses as the reason for debt. Email printouts between my mother and someone named Marcus, who appeared to be a gambling addiction counselor she'd seen exactly twice before quitting. How long have you known? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I suspected for years, but I had no proof until recently. Robert pulled out another folder. Your mother likes to brag to the extended family about Madison. These are emails she's sent to various relatives. I read through them, each word a fresh wound. In message after message, my mother painted a picture of 2 daughters, Madison the superstar and Amber the disappointment. She complained about my lack of ambition and settling for nursing, while praising Madison's every achievement. One email to my aunt in California made me gasp. Thank God for Madison's success. At least I have one daughter who won't embarrass me at family functions. Amber means well, but she's never had Madison's drive or intelligence. Some children just aren't meant for greatness. This was sent last month, Robert noted. The same week you paid her mortgage. I pushed the papers away, feeling sick. Does everyone in the family think I'm a failure? No. Robert's voice was firm. Most of us see through Patricia's nonsense. We know about your nursing awards, Amber. Your cousin Sarah told us. We know you're exceptional at what you do, even if your mother refuses to acknowledge it. Then why hasn't anyone said anything? Robert sighed deeply. Family politics. No one wanted to get involved in Patricia's drama. But I can't stay silent anymore, not after seeing what she's done to you financially. He pulled out a final document, a spreadsheet he'd created tracking my mother's known income and expenses. The numbers were staggering. Between the alimony, the inheritance, and investment dividends from her portfolio, my mother had received over $1.2 million in the past 5 years. Where did it all go? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Online gambling is particularly vicious, Robert explained. No limits, no closing time, no one to cut you off. Based on these casino statements, she's been betting $5,000 to $10,000 a night when she's on a streak. I thought about all the times I'd skipped meals to save money-worn shoes with holes to avoid buying new ones, told Derek we couldn't go out because I was budgeting. All while my mother clicked away fortunes on digital slot machines. There's one more thing, Robert said hesitantly. I've been in touch with your father recently. He wanted you to know something, but Patricia threatened legal action if he contacted you directly. What now? I laughed bitterly. He's been setting aside money for you. Half of what he pays Patricia each month goes into a trust in your name. He knew Patricia would never share it fairly between you and Madison. My eyes filled with tears. Dad did that? He never believed Patricia's lies about you. He knows exactly who you are and what you've sacrificed. Robert handed me a tissue. The trust will be accessible when you turn 30. It's not enough to replace what you've lost, but it's something. We sat in silence for a moment before I asked the question that had been burning since Madison's party. Did you know Madison was aware of all this? Robert nodded slowly. I suspected. She called me last year asking about the inheritance, wanting to ensure she wasn't liable for any of Patricia's debts. When I told her there were no debts because Patricia had substantial income, she just said, "I see," and hung up. She left me to handle it alone. I said the betrayal still fresh. "Madison learned early how to protect herself from your mother," Robert said. "Unfortunately, she protected herself at your expense." I spent another 2 hours with Robert creating a plan to extricate myself from my mother's financial web. He helped me draft letters to close joint accounts, remove myself from her credit cards, and document everything for potential legal action. "You'll need to be prepared," he warned. "Patricia won't take this well. She's grown accustomed to your support, both financial and emotional. What about Madison? Should I confront her?" Robert considered this carefully. "That's your choice. But remember, Madison made her choice 3 years ago. She chose self-preservation over sisterhood. Whether that's forgivable is something only you can decide." As I prepared to leave, Robert pulled me into a tight hug. "You're not a disappointment, Amber. You're a hero. Those children at the hospital are lucky to have you, and Derek is lucky to have someone with such a generous heart. Don't let Patricia's poison make you doubt your worth." Driving home, I felt a strange mix of devastation and liberation. The truth was uglier than I'd imagined, but at least now I knew. My mother wasn't a struggling divorcee. She was an addict who'd burned through a fortune. My sister wasn't too busy to help. She'd made a calculated decision to let me shoulder the burden. But perhaps most importantly, I wasn't the family failure. I was the one who'd stepped up, who'd sacrificed, who'd shown true character even if it had been exploited. Uncle Robert's records proved what my mother had spent years denying, that I had value beyond my bank account. That night I created my own spreadsheet, not of money lost, but of what I'd gained. Every child I'd helped heal, every family I'd comforted, every life I'd touched in my little nursing job. The list grew longer than any of Madison's achievement lists, filled with moments that mattered more than billable hours or corner offices. Change was no longer just coming. It was here, and armed with the truth and Uncle Robert's support, I was finally ready to reclaim my life from the shadow of my mother's lies and my sister's betrayal. The receipts were in. The evidence was clear. Now all that remained was deciding how to use it. The October air was crisp as Derek and I walked through Riverside Park, autumn leaves crunching beneath our feet. We'd been dating for 2 years, and I could sense something significant was coming from the way he kept touching his jacket pocket. My heart should have been soaring, but instead it was heavy with the weight of secrets I'd kept from him. "Amber, there's something I need to say." Derek began guiding me to a bench overlooking the pond where we'd had our first kiss. The setting sun painted everything golden perfect for what I knew was coming. He dropped to one knee and my world tilted. The ring was simple and elegant, exactly what I would have chosen. His words were beautiful, talking about building a future together, about the family we dreamed of, about growing old side by side. "Yes," I whispered because I loved him more than words could express. But as he slipped the ring onto my finger, tears streamed down my face, not just from joy, but from the crushing realization that I couldn't give him the wedding he deserved, the home we'd planned, or the secure future he thought we were building. "Hey, what's wrong?" Derek cupped my face, concern replacing celebration. "These don't look like happy tears." That's when I broke. 2 years of hiding my financial situation, of making excuses for why we couldn't take vacations, or why I insisted on splitting even small expenses when I could barely afford them. It all came pouring out. "I need to tell you something," I said, pulling him back onto the bench. "About my mother, about where my money really goes." For the next hour, I laid bare every detail. The monthly payments, the depleted savings, the gambling addiction I'd been enabling. Derek listened without interrupting his expression, shifting from confusion to shock, to something I couldn't quite read. $73,000, he repeated when I finished. You've given her $73,000 while we've been planning a future together. I wanted to tell you, I said desperately, but I was ashamed and scared. And I kept thinking next month would be different, that she'd get better, that I could fix it before you found out. Derek stood abruptly, pacing along the pond's edge. 2 years, Amber. We've been together 2 years, and you never thought to mention you were supporting your gambling-addicted mother. I know how it sounds. Do you... He turned back to me, hurt evident in his eyes. We talked about buying a house next year, about starting a family. I've been saving every penny while you've been. God, no wonder you always looked stressed when we discussed the future. I'm going to stop, I said quickly. I've already talked to Uncle Robert. I'm cutting her off. When? The question hung between us. When I'd been saying soon for months now, ever since discovering the truth about her finances. I need to do it gradually, I heard myself saying. If I cut her off suddenly, she might... Might what? Derek's voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. Might have to use some of that $15,000 a month she gets in alimony. Might have to stop gambling. Might have to treat you like a daughter instead of an ATM. His words stung because they were true. Every excuse I made sounded hollow when said out loud. 1 month, I said finally. Give me 1 month to figure out how to tell her. Derek sat back down beside me but didn't take my hand. I need to think about this, Amber. It's not just the money. It's the deception. The fact that you chose your mother's addiction over our future. That you've been lying to me every time we talked about our plans. We drove home in silence, the engagement ring feeling heavy on my finger. That night, Derek stayed at his apartment for the first time in months. I sat alone, staring at my laptop screen where my mother's latest text waited. Electricity bill is higher this month. Need an extra $500. Love you, sweetie. I started typing my response, the same automatic agreement I'd sent dozens of times before. But Derek's words echoed in my mind. I was choosing her addiction over our future, over the children we wanted, over the life we'd dreamed of building. I deleted the draft and called my mother instead. Amber, perfect timing. Did you get my text about the electricity? Mom, we need to talk. I can't keep... Oh, here we go, she interrupted, her voice immediately sharp. Let me guess, Derek's filling your head with selfish ideas. This is what happens when you date men who don't understand family obligations. This isn't about Derek. This is about me needing to save for my future. Your future. She laughed bitterly. Your future is being a mediocre nurse while your sister makes something of herself. The least you can do is help your mother maintain some dignity. Or would you rather I become homeless? Is that what you want? You get $15,000 a month from Dad, I said quietly. Silence. Then, who told you that that's a lie? Your father left me with nothing. I've seen the bank statements, Mom. You've been snooping through my private affairs. Her voice rose to near hysteria. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. Everything you've done for me, years of suppressed anger suddenly erupted. You mean comparing me to Madison at every opportunity, telling the entire family I'm a disappointment, taking my money while calling my career little and simple? Don't be dramatic, Amber. You've always been too sensitive. I'm done, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. No more money. Not for electricity, not for the mortgage, not for anything. Fine, she hissed. But don't come crying to me when the family finds out what kind of person you really are. I'll make sure everyone knows how you abandoned your mother in her time of need. Your cousins, your aunts, everyone at the hospital where you work. I'll ruin you, Amber. Is that what you want? Do what you have to do, I said, though my hands shook. But I'm done enabling your gambling. Gambling. How dare you accuse me of... I hung up. Immediately, my phone exploded with texts, each more vitriolic than the last. Threats to call my supervisor, to show up at the hospital, to tell Derek I was mentally unstable, to turn the entire family against me. I turned off my phone and sat in the darkness of my apartment, feeling simultaneously free and terrified. The ring on my finger caught the moonlight, a reminder of everything at stake. The next morning, Derek came by before his shift. He looked exhausted, and I realized he'd probably slept as poorly as I had. "I called your mother," he said without preamble. My blood ran cold. "You what?" I needed to understand, to hear her side. He pulled out his phone. "I recorded it. You need to hear this." His phone crackled to life with my mother's voice, sweet and manipulative. "Derek, darling, I'm so glad you called. I've been worried about Amber's mental state lately. She's been making up these wild stories about me needing money. The truth is, she's always been jealous of Madison and creates drama for attention. I've been thinking she might need professional help." "So you haven't been taking money from her?" Derek's recorded voice asked. "Taking money?" "Oh, Derek, it's so much worse than that. Amber insists on trying to control my finances. She's obsessed with this idea that I need her help. I've told her repeatedly I'm fine, but she has this complex about being needed. It's quite concerning, actually. Has she shown other signs of instability?" The recording continued for 5 more minutes, my mother painting a picture of me as delusional, unstable, and potentially dangerous. She even suggested Derek should be careful and consider whether I was marriage material, given my mental issues. "She's trying to gaslight me," Derek said when it finished. "Make me think you're crazy. But here's the thing. She slipped up. She mentioned specific amounts you'd given her before catching herself. She knows exactly what she's been doing." "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I should have told you everything from the beginning." Derek sat beside me, finally taking my hand. "I'm hurt you didn't trust me enough to share this, but I'm more angry at how she's treated you. No mother should do this to their child." "So where does this leave us?" I asked, afraid of the answer. "It leaves us with a decision to make," he said. "Either we face this together as a team, or we don't face it at all. But I need to know you're really done with enabling her. No more excuses, no more gradual transitions. Cut her off completely, or I can't stay." "I already told her no last night," I said. "She threatened to destroy my reputation." "Then we document everything. Save every text, every threat. If she wants to play dirty, we'll be prepared." Derek squeezed my hand. "But Amber, this has to be it. No backsliding when she guilt trips you. No secret payments. Complete cut off." "I promise," I said, and meant it. "I choose us. I choose our future." Derek kissed my forehead. "Then we'll get through this together. But first you need to warn your workplace about potential harassment. And maybe talk to a lawyer about a restraining order if her threats escalate." As he left for work, I felt the ground shifting beneath me. The breaking point had come and gone. I'd chosen my future over my past, my partner over my parent, my life over her lies. The war was far from over. My mother's threats made that clear. But for the first time in 3 years, I was fighting for myself instead of funding her destruction. And with Derek by my side and the truth as my weapon, I was finally ready for whatever came next. My phone buzzed with another text from my mother. "Last chance, Amber. Send the money or face the consequences." I deleted it without responding. The breaking point had passed. Now came the aftermath. The dining room smelled of turkey and tradition, but tension crackled in the air like electricity before a storm. 1 month after cutting off my mother financially, I stood in the doorway of my childhood home, watching family members fill their plates and find their seats. Derek squeezed my hand reassuringly before we entered together. Madison sat at the place of honor, naturally wearing a designer suit, even for a family dinner. Her latest achievement, making partner, had been the subject of Mom's gushing phone calls to every relative. The banner still hung in the living room, a monument to favored daughter status. "Look who decided to show up," Aunt Carol said warmly, pulling me into a hug. "We were starting to wonder if you'd come." I'd almost didn't. The past month had been a barrage of manipulative texts, angry voicemails, and threats from my mother. She'd called my supervisor at the hospital, who thankfully knew me well enough to dismiss her claims. She'd sent emails to extended family painting me as an ungrateful daughter abandoning her poor mother. She'd even shown up at my apartment building, forcing Derek and I to have security escort her out. But I'd come tonight for one reason: to finally speak my truth to the entire family. "Amber, how nice of you to grace us with your presence," Mom said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Though I suppose we should be grateful you could tear yourself away from— what is it you do again?" "Oh yes, your little job." "I'm a pediatric nurse, Mom. Have been for 6 years. I took my seat, Derek beside me. "Yes, well, not all of us can be partners at major law firms." She raised her wine glass toward Madison. "To success." Everyone raised their glasses except me. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. "Problem, Amber." Mom's eyes glinted dangerously. "No problem," I said evenly. "Just wondering how you're affording this spread since you've been telling everyone you're broke." Forks paused midway to mouths. Uncle Robert, seated across from me, gave an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. "I manage," Mom said tightly. "No thanks to certain ungrateful children." Madison shifted uncomfortably, but remained silent as always. The meal continued with strained conversation. Mom regaled everyone with Madison's latest courtroom victory, the pro bono work she'd done for publicity, the magazine article featuring the city's top 30 under 35. With each story, she shot pointed looks at me, silent reminders of my inadequacy. Finally, as she launched into yet another Madison story, something inside me snapped. "That's wonderful that Madison's doing so well," I interrupted. "Successful enough to help with your bills, I imagine." The room went quiet. Mom's face flushed. "What bills? I don't know what you're talking about." "The mortgage I've been paying for 3 years, the utilities, the credit cards." I pulled out my phone, the bank statements already loaded. "Should I continue—" "Amber," Madison warned. "This isn't the time." "When is the time, Madison?" I turned to face my sister. "When you overheard me crying in the bathroom at your birthday party, when you told Dad you knew about Mom's gambling but didn't want to get involved, when you decided letting me go broke was easier than dealing with family drama." Gasps echoed around the table. Madison's perfect composure cracked. "I don't know what you think you heard." "I heard you on the phone," I said. "At your party. You knew Mom was broke. You knew about the gambling. You knew I was paying for everything. And you literally said, and I quote, 'If my bleeding heart sister wants to enable Mom's addiction while I build my career, who am I to interfere?'" "Is this true?" Aunt Carol asked, looking between Madison and Mom. "Of course not." Mom stood her chair, scraping against hardwood. "Amber's always been jealous of her sister. Now she's making up lies." $73,000, I announced to the room. "That's how much I've given Mom in 3 years, while she gets $15,000 a month in alimony from Dad, while she had a $400,000 inheritance from Grandma that she gambled away." "How dare you?" Mom's mask finally slipped completely. "You worthless, pathetic excuse for a daughter you'll never be as good as Madison, and you know it? Then ask her to pay your bills," I said, standing to face her. The words that had started this confrontation came full circle. The room went utterly silent. What?" Mom sputtered. "You heard me. If Madison's so superior, if I'm such a disappointment, then ask your golden child to pay your mortgage. Ask her to cover your gambling debts. Ask her to fund your addiction while you tell everyone she's perfect and I'm nothing. I pulled out a folder from my bag, copies of every bank statement, every transfer, every payment I'd made. I set it on the table. 3 years of receipts, I continued. Every penny documented. While you told the family I was a failure, I was keeping you afloat. While you praised Madison's success, I was destroying my own future to maintain your facade. This is ridiculous. Madison finally spoke, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. Mom's not a gambler. She would never... Rivers Casino Platinum member, I said, pulling out the reward statement Robert had helped me obtain. Average loss of $12,000 per month. Online poker account with a $100,000 deficit. Should I continue? The extended family sat in shocked silence. Cousin Sarah had her phone out recording everything. Good. I wanted witnesses. Madison knew. I continued, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. She's known for at least a year. But why help when stupid, naive Amber was handling it? I have a career to protect, Madison said defensively. I couldn't afford to get tangled up in Mom's problems. You made the choice to help her. I made the choice believing she needed help, I shot back. You knew it was enabling. You knew about the gambling. And you stayed silent while watching me drown. Mom grabbed the bank statements, her hands shaking. These are private. You had no right. I had every right. It's my money, my sacrificed future, my empty retirement account. I turned to address the entire family. She threatened to ruin my reputation when I finally cut her off last month, called my workplace, tried to have me fired, told my fiancé I was mentally unstable. Patricia, is this true? Uncle Robert asked, though he already knew the answer. Instead of responding, Mom turned her fury on me. Get out! Get out of my house! Gladly. I gathered my things, Derek rising with me, but I wasn't done. Oh, one more thing. Dad's been setting aside money for me since the divorce. Half of every alimony payment. He knew you'd never share fairly. Madison's head snapped up. What? Surprise, Madison. You're not the only one with a trust fund now. The difference is mine came from a father who saw through Mom's lies. Yours came from being complicit in them. I started toward the door, then paused. I'm done being the family disappointment. I'm done being compared to someone who chose success over basic human decency. And I'm done pretending this is normal. If you leave now, you're no longer my daughter, Mom shrieked. I haven't been your daughter in years, I said quietly. I've been your bank account. There's a difference. The room erupted as we left. Aunt Carol calling Patricia out for her lies, Uncle Robert confirming everything I'd said, cousins demanding explanations, Madison trying to maintain control as her perfect image crumbled. Outside in the cool November air, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. Derek wrapped his arm around me as we walked to the car. You were incredible, he said. How do you feel? Free, I answered honestly. Sad, angry, hurt, but free. My phone buzzed with texts from family members, support from cousins who'd suspected the truth, apologies from aunts who'd believed my mother's lies. Even a message from my father, I'm proud of you, sweetheart. It's time the truth came out. Notably absent were any messages from Madison or my mother. As we drove away from my childhood home, probably for the last time, I thought about the feast they were finishing without me. The turkey would taste bitter now, seasoned with exposed lies and shattered illusions. The conversation would be different too, no longer about Madison's perfection, but about Patricia's deception and Madison's complicity. I'd blown up Thanksgiving, destroyed the carefully crafted narrative my mother had spent years building, revealed the golden child as tarnished and the disappointment as the only one with integrity. It wasn't the family gathering anyone had planned, but it was the one we needed. Truth has a way of demanding its moment, and tonight at last it had been served alongside the cranberry sauce and stuffing. The aftermath would be messy. Relationships would need to be rebuilt or abandoned. Madison would have to face questions about her choices. Mom would have to confront her addiction without my enabling. But that was their journey now. Mine led forward toward a life built on truth instead of lies, partnership instead of manipulation, and self-worth that didn't depend on a mother's approval that would never come. The sun was setting as we reached home, painting the sky in shades of amber. Fitting, I thought. Amber had finally risen. The silence after my revelation lasted exactly 3 seconds before the dining room exploded into chaos. I had stopped in the doorway, unable to resist watching the immediate aftermath of truth detonating in a room full of carefully maintained lies. "Patricia, how could you—" Aunt Carol's voice cut through the noise. She was Mom's older sister, usually diplomatic to a fault, but now her face showed raw disgust. $400,000, Mother left you that money to secure your future, not gamble it away. This is a private family matter. Mom attempted, but her voice lacked its usual authority. Private? Uncle Thomas, Dad's younger brother, stood up so forcefully his chair tipped backward. You've been bleeding Amber dry while sending us emails about how disappointing she is, while she's been paying your bills. Madison sat frozen, her partner-perfect posture crumbling as cousins and aunts turned their attention to her. The golden child who'd never faced family scrutiny was suddenly under a microscope. You knew, Cousin Sarah asked Madison directly. You knew Aunt Patricia was stealing from Amber and you said nothing. I didn't. It wasn't stealing, Madison stammered. Amber chose to help her mother who was lying about being broke, Aunt Janet interrupted. While you sat at every family dinner listening to Patricia tear Amber down knowing the truth. My God, Madison, what kind of sister are you? Derek and I remained frozen by the door, watching years of family dynamics shatter in real time. He squeezed my hand silently, asking if I wanted to leave. I shook my head. I needed to see this through. Uncle Robert stood up, commanding attention with his quiet authority. I've been documenting Patricia's financial fraud for 2 years, he announced, including emails where she brags about Madison while deliberately painting Amber as a failure, all while taking Amber's money. Robert, you wouldn't dare, Mom threatened, but fear had replaced anger in her eyes. I've already sent copies to everyone here, he continued, holding up his phone. Check your emails. See for yourselves how Patricia has been playing this family. Phones appeared around the table. The silence that followed was punctuated only by sharp intakes of breath and muttered curses as family members read the evidence. This email from last month, Cousin Michael read aloud, says, Thank God Madison doesn't waste her time on losers like Amber does with those hospital brats. Patricia Amber works in pediatric oncology. She helps children with cancer. And this one, Aunt Carol's voice shook with fury. Patricia writing to her college friends, I tell everyone Madison's my only daughter. It's easier than explaining why Amber turned out so ordinary. Madison's face had gone pale. Mom, you told me you were proud of both of us. Oh, please, Mom snapped, cornered and lashing out. Don't pretend you cared about Amber. You were happy to let her handle the mess while you played successful lawyer. I didn't think. Madison's voice broke, and for the first time in years, I saw real emotion crack her perfect facade. I thought she wanted to help. I thought it made her feel important. Important! I couldn't help but interject from the doorway. You thought destroying my financial future made me feel important. Madison turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I was scared, okay, Scared that if I got involved, if I confronted Mom about the gambling, she'd turn on me too. She'd stop loving me, and being her favorite was all I had. All you had, Derek spoke for the first time, his voice deadly calm. You had a 6-figure salary, a penthouse, a successful career. Amber had nothing left, and you knew it. You don't understand. Madison stood wobbling in her designer heels. The pressure of being perfect, of never disappointing her. Do you know what it's like to be held to impossible standards every single day? Yes, I said quietly. I understand being held to impossible standards, like the standard of being Madison, which I failed at every single day while still paying Mom's bills. Enough, Mom shrieked. This is all Amber's fault for being vindictive and… Shut up, Patricia. The roar came from Grandpa Joe, Mom's father, who rarely spoke above a whisper. At 91, he commanded respect through presence alone. The room fell silent. I've listened to this garbage for the last time. He said, his voice steady despite his age. Patricia, you're a disgrace. Your mother would be horrified to know you gambled away her money while stealing from the daughter who actually embodies her values. He turned to Madison. And you? Smart enough to make partner but too cowardly to protect your sister. That's not success, girl. That's selfishness dressed up in a power suit. Then his eyes found mine and they softened. Amber, come here. I walked over, kneeling beside his chair. He took my hands in his weathered ones. Your grandmother saw this coming, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. That's why she left a second trust, one Patricia doesn't know about. Robert's been managing it, waiting for the right time. Mom's gasp was audible. That's impossible. I saw all the estate documents. You saw what we wanted you to see, Grandpa Joe continued. Eleanor knew you favored Madison, knew you'd shortchange Amber, so she set aside $250,000 specifically for the grandchild who showed true character. That's Amber. When I whispered, overwhelmed, Your 30th birthday, 4 weeks away. He patted my cheek. Eleanor wrote you a letter too. Said she knew you'd be the one to inherit her heart, not just her money. Madison sank back into her chair. $250,000? That should have been mine. Mom lunged forward, but Uncle Thomas caught her arm. I'm her daughter. That money belongs to me. Like the $400,000 you already pissed away? Aunt Carol asked. Like the $15,000 a month from Frank you've been gambling while stealing from Amber? I need help, Madison said, suddenly, the words tumbling out. I've been in therapy for 2 years. Anxiety medication, sleeping pills, beta blockers for presentations. The pressure of being perfect, of maintaining Mom's image of me, it's killing me. I work 100-hour weeks, not because I love law, but because if I slow down, if I'm not the best, what am I? She looked directly at me. You were always free to be yourself. Nursing suited you. Helping people came naturally. I envied that. God, I envied your authenticity while I played a role I'm not even sure I chose. Don't you dare, I said, standing. Don't you dare make yourself the victim here. You had choices. You chose to stay silent. Chose to let me drown. That wasn't pressure, Madison. That was cowardice. She's right, Grandpa Joe said. Both of you girls got twisted up by Patricia's poison, but Madison, you twisted yourself willingly. Amber just tried to help despite the abuse. I think, Uncle Robert interjected, we need to discuss Patricia's gambling addiction, and whether we stage an intervention or let her hit rock bottom. Rock bottom. Mom laughed bitterly. You've all turned on me. My own family poisoned by this ungrateful… You poisoned yourself, Aunt Janet cut her off. With greed, with favoritism, with lies. Amber didn't expose you, Patricia. You exposed yourself the day you decided one daughter was worth more than the other. The conversation continued for another hour. Aunts and uncles shared stories of times they'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't spoken up. Cousins admitted they'd always admired my work, but had been afraid to contradict Patricia's narrative. The family secret had been a poorly kept one, it turned out, but no one had been brave enough to confront it until now. Madison excused herself twice to be sick, the stress of her perfect image crumbling, making her physically ill. Mom cycled between rage, self-pity, and desperate bargaining. The family collectively decided on two things. Patricia would enter gambling addiction treatment and Madison would start paying back what I'd spent supporting Mom. "I can't afford $73,000, Madison protested weakly. "You make $300,000 a year." Cousin Michael, also a lawyer, pointed out. "You can afford it. Consider it a stupidity tax for knowing your sister was being drained and doing nothing." As the evening wound down, family members approached me one by one. Apologies, hugs, promises to do better. Aunt Carol pulled me aside privately. "I'm ashamed," she admitted. "I knew something was off, but I didn't want to cause drama. I let you suffer to keep the peace. Can you forgive me?" "I need time," I answered honestly. It hurt feeling so alone while everyone watched. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Fair enough. But know this, you're the strongest person in this family. And from now on, we all know it." Derek and I finally left at close to midnight. The house was in shambles, emotionally and literally, as Mom had thrown plates during one of her tantrums. Madison sat alone at the destroyed dinner table, mascara streaking her cheeks, the partner who'd lost everything that mattered in pursuit of everything that didn't. "Wait!" she called as we passed. "Amber, please." I paused but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know it's not enough. I know I can't undo the damage. But I'm sorry. And I'm going to get help too. Real help, not just pills to manage symptoms." "I hope you do," I said without looking back. "For your own sake, not mine. I'm done saving people who won't save themselves." The drive home was quiet except for Derek's occasional check-ins. Was I okay? Did I need anything? How did I feel? "Like I performed major surgery," I finally answered. "Removed a tumor that's been growing for years. It hurts, there'll be scars, but the patient might actually survive now." My phone had been buzzing nonstop with messages from family members. Support apologies, shock at the revelations. Dad had sent a simple message. "Your mother finally faced what I've known for years. I'm sorry you paid the price for my cowardice in not exposing her sooner." But the message that stopped me cold came from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a photo of a handwritten note. "My dearest Amber, if you're reading this, then Robert has told you about the trust. I want you to know I see you. I've always seen you. Your mother's blindness to your worth doesn't diminish it. You have my heart, dear one. The money is just paper. Your compassion is the real inheritance. Use this gift to build the life you deserve, not the one others expect. All my love, Grandma Eleanor." I sobbed, then really sobbed for the grandmother who'd seen me when no one else had, for the validation I'd craved for so long, for the family that had finally stood up for truth. The turkey might have gone cold and the pumpkin pie might have gone uneaten, but this Thanksgiving had served exactly what was needed, a reckoning that would reshape our family forever. Some would heal, some would not. But all would remember the night Amber stopped being invisible and started being seen for exactly who she was, the one who'd held it all together while everyone else had looked away. The golden child had tarnished. The disappointment had shined, and the family would never be the same. 3 months after that explosive Thanksgiving, I stood in the morning sunlight streaming through the windows of our new home. Derek and I had closed on it the week before, using part of Grandma Eleanor's trust as a down payment. It wasn't large or fancy, just a 3-bedroom craftsman with a wraparound porch and room for the garden I'd always dreamed of. But it was ours, bought with clean money and clear consciences. "Mail's here," Derek called from the front door. He handed me a stack that included a thick envelope with familiar handwriting. Madison. I'd been receiving weekly letters from her for 2 months now. At first, I hadn't opened them, letting them pile up in a drawer. But my therapist, yes, I'd finally started seeing one, had encouraged me to read them when I felt ready. Today felt like the day. Inside Madison's usually perfect penmanship showed signs of shakiness. Amber, today marks 60 days in my recovery program. Not for substances, but for what my therapist calls achievement addiction and enabling family dysfunction. I'm learning that being the golden child was its own kind of prison. I've made my first payment toward the $73,000. It's in your account now. I know money can't buy forgiveness, but I need to make this right in every way I can. Mom entered rehab last month after hitting rock bottom. She tried to steal from Aunt Carol and got arrested. It was the wake-up call she needed. She's asked about you, but I've respected your no-contact boundary. I quit the partnership track at my firm. The senior partners were shocked, but I couldn't keep living for other people's approval. I'm doing public interest law now, making 1/3 of my old salary, but sleeping through the night for the first time in years. I dream about having a real relationship with you someday. Not now, I haven't earned that. But someday when you're ready, if you're ever ready. Your sister in name, if nothing else yet, Madison. I set the letter aside, noting the deposit notification on my phone. $12,000, well above the payment plan we'd agreed to through lawyers. Madison was trying, at least. My phone rang. Uncle Robert with his weekly check-in. He'd become something of a father figure since everything exploded. "How's the house settling?" he asked warmly. "Perfectly. Derek's installing shelves in what will be the nursery." "Nursery!" His voice lifted with excitement. "Not yet," I laughed. "But within the year, we hope. We're finally in a position to plan for it." Eleanor would be so proud. You know, she always said you reminded her of herself. Practical, caring, but with steel underneath when needed. "I wish I'd known her better," I admitted. "She knew you, and that's what mattered. Speaking of which, there's something else she left for you. I was instructed to wait until you were settled in your own home." That afternoon, Robert arrived with a wooden chest I recognized from Grandma's house. Inside were her journals dating back decades, and a smaller box containing her nursing pin from the 1950s. She was a nurse. I gasped, running my fingers over the vintage pin. "Pediatric, just like you." Robert smiled. "Your mother never mentioned it because she was ashamed Eleanor worked instead of being a society wife. But Eleanor saved every letter from grateful families, every photo of recovered children. It's all in here." I spent hours reading through my grandmother's journals, discovering a woman who'd faced similar family struggles, who'd been dismissed for choosing service over status, who'd found joy in healing despite others' judgment. Her words felt like conversations across time. True worth isn't measured in achievements others can applaud, but in the lives we touch when no one's watching. That evening, Derek found me surrounded by papers, crying happy tears. "She was just like me," I whispered. "Or I'm just like her. Either way, I'm not alone." "You've never been alone," he said, pulling me close. "You just had to find your real family." Over the following weeks, life settled into new rhythms. I received a promotion at the hospital. Turned out my supervisor had been waiting for me to stop being so stressed to offer me a leadership position in the new pediatric pain management program. The role came with a substantial raise and the opportunity to develop protocols that would help countless children. Family dynamics shifted dramatically. Sunday dinners happened at Aunt Carol's now with a standing invitation I sometimes accepted. Mom remained in rehab, sending me letters I wasn't ready to read. Madison continued her payments and her therapy, slowly rebuilding her life outside our mother's shadow. Cousin Sarah started a family newsletter celebrating everyone's achievements equally, from her teenage son making honor roll to Uncle Thomas's retirement to my recent nursing award. No pedestals, no comparisons, just celebration of each person's journey. The wedding planning began in earnest. We'd decided on a small ceremony in our backyard, surrounded by the people who'd stood by us through the darkness. My dress would be simple, the flowers from our own garden, the reception a potluck where everyone contributed something made with love. "I want to invite Madison," I told Derek one evening as we addressed invitations. "Not to the wedding party, but as a guest, if she's willing to come knowing she's not the center of attention." Derek studied my face. "Are you sure?" "Grandma's journals talk a lot about forgiveness," I explained. "Not for the other person's sake, but for our own peace. I don't want to carry this anger forever." Madison's response came quickly, accepting with gratitude and asking if she could contribute to the potluck. "I've been learning to cook," she wrote. "Turns out I'm good at things that don't require billing by the hour." 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a different kind of letter. The return address was the rehabilitation center, the handwriting unmistakably Mom's. Derek held my hand as I opened it. "Amber, they tell me acknowledging the harm we've caused is step 9. I've been stuck on it for weeks because the list of harms is so long. I stole more than money from you. I stole your confidence, your peace, your relationship with your sister, your faith in family. I convinced myself I was teaching you strength through criticism, but I was just projecting my own insecurities onto the daughter who reflected the parts of myself I'd been taught to hate. Your grandmother tried to tell me. She said I was making the same mistake her mother made, valuing appearance over substance. I didn't listen. I was too busy chasing approval from people who didn't matter while destroying the child who did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that in my clearer moments, I see who you really are. You're not Madison's lesser version. You're Eleanor's true heir, the one who inherited her heart, her healing hands, her ability to love despite being unloved. They say I can have visitors next month. I understand if you never come, but know that in every group session, every therapy appointment, every step toward recovery, I carry the weight of what I did to you, and the hope that someday that weight will transform into the mother you deserved all along. Patricia." I read it twice, then folded it carefully. "I'm not ready," I told Derek. "But maybe someday. There's no timeline for healing," he reminded me. "You've already done the hard part, breaking the cycle." Our wedding day dawned bright and clear. I stood in our bedroom pinning Grandma Eleanor's nursing pin to my simple dress when Madison knocked. "I wanted to give you this before the ceremony," she said, holding out a wrapped gift. Inside was a photo I'd never seen. Grandma Eleanor holding baby me with a handwritten note on the back. "This one has my heart." "I found it going through Mom's things when we cleared the house for sale," Madison explained. "She'd hidden it along with others of you and Grandma. I thought you should have them." "Thank you," I managed through tears. "No, Amber, thank you for having the courage I didn't, for saving our family from its own poison, for showing me it's never too late to choose differently." The ceremony was everything we dreamed. Intimate, genuine, and filled with love. Uncle Robert walked me down the aisle, Grandpa Joe officiated with stories of lasting love, and Cousin Sarah's daughter scattered rose petals from our garden. As Derek and I exchanged vows, I caught sight of the table we'd set up with photos of those who couldn't be there. Grandma Eleanor's portrait sat in the center, her nursing pin visible. Her smile seeming to bless this new beginning. "You are my choice," Derek said during his vows, "not because you're perfect, but because you're real. You've shown me that love isn't just feeling, but choosing to heal, choosing to grow, choosing to build something beautiful from broken pieces. My vows came from the heart. You saw me when I couldn't see myself. You stood by me when standing was hard. You loved me not despite my scars, but including them knowing they're proof of survival, not damage. I choose you today, and always as my partner in this life, we're building on truth and tenderness. The reception flowed into the evening filled with laughter and stories. Madison's homemade lasagna was surprisingly good. Aunt Carol's speech about family redemption brought tears. Even the hospital colleagues who'd become my chosen family shared tales of my compassion that Mom had never bothered to hear. As the sun set, I found myself standing in our garden looking at the life we'd created. Derek joined me, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Any regrets?" he asked. "None," I said firmly. "Every choice, every pain, every stand I took led me here. To this home, this man, this future we're building. Grandma Eleanor was right. Money is just paper. This is the real inheritance." 6 months later, I was back in that garden planting roses when my phone rang. Mom's rehabilitation center. "Mrs. Amber Chen," the counselor asked. "Your mother has completed her program. She's asking if you'd be willing to participate in a family session. No pressure, but she wanted to extend the invitation." I looked down at my hands dirty from good soil, wearing both my wedding ring and Eleanor's nursing pin on a chain. My other hand rested on my still flat belly where our first child grew. A secret Derek and I were savoring before sharing. "I'll think about it," I said, and meant it. Later that evening, as Derek and I prepared dinner together in our kitchen, I told him about the call. "What does your gut say?" he asked. "That I'm strong enough to hear her out. That doesn't mean reconciliation, but maybe it means closure." "Then we'll go together," he decided. "You don't face hard things alone anymore." I pulled out Grandma Eleanor's journal, reading an entry from near the end of her life. Family isn't just who we're born to, but who we choose to become. Sometimes that means letting go of those who hurt us. Sometimes it means holding space for their growth while protecting our own. Wisdom is knowing the difference, and courage is acting on that knowledge. The next morning, I called the rehab center back. "I'll come," I said. "Once. We'll see where it goes from there." As I hung up, Derek kissed my forehead. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too," I admitted, and for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. Looking back now, I see that Thanksgiving confrontation as the moment everything changed. Not just for me, but for our entire family dynamic. The golden child discovered she was human. The scapegoat learned she was gold. The enablers faced their complicity. And the narcissist hit bottom hard enough to finally seek help. But the biggest change was in me. I stopped seeking approval from those incapable of giving it. I stopped measuring my worth by someone else's yardstick. I stopped believing that love required sacrifice of self. Instead, I learned that real love, from Derek, from found family, from the grandmother who saw me truly, builds you up rather than breaks you down. That setting boundaries isn't selfish but necessary. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is stop enabling their destruction. My mother's sneer that I'd never be as good as my sister turned out to be true, just not in the way she meant. I'd never be as good at pretending, at sacrificing authenticity for achievement, at choosing image over integrity. And for that, I was grateful. As I write this, my daughter is sleeping upstairs. Eleanor Sarah Chen, named for the women who taught me strength, comes in many forms. She'll grow up in a home where worth isn't conditional, where achievements are celebrated equally, where love is shown through respect, not control. The cycle broke with me. The inheritance Grandma Eleanor left wasn't just money or journals or a nursing pin. It was the knowledge that we can choose differently, that patterns aren't destiny, that sometimes standing up and saying enough is the greatest act of love, for others and ourselves. My story isn't unique. Too many families have their golden children and scapegoats, their enablers and addicts, their secrets and lies. But every story of someone breaking free, speaking truth, choosing healing over harmony adds light to the darkness. If you're reading this and see yourself in my journey, whether as the overlooked child, the pressured favorite, or even the parent who lost their way, know that change is possible. It's painful, messy, and often means burning down what was to build what should be. But on the other side is freedom. Real freedom. The kind that lets you plant gardens without guilt, love without losing yourself, and face mirrors knowing the person looking back is exactly who they're meant to be. Grandma Eleanor was right. True worth isn't measured in achievements others can applaud, but in the lives we touch when no one's watching. In the children I comfort at the hospital. In the marriage built on truth. In the daughter who'll never doubt her value. In the family members who found courage to change because one person finally said, "No more." That's my inheritance, that's my legacy, and it's worth more than all the golden pedestals in the world. To those still trapped in toxic family dynamics, believing you'll never be good enough, you already are. You always were. Sometimes it just takes burning down the house of lies to finally see your own light. Stand up, speak out, choose yourself. The view from the other side is worth it, I promise. So that's my story. How a sneer became a catalyst, how loss became gain, how the truth really did set us free. Not easily, not painlessly, but completely. What about you? What truths are you holding back? What boundaries are you afraid to set? What life are you postponing while waiting for approval that may never come? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you faced similar family dynamics? How did you find the courage to break free? What helped you realize your worth wasn't dependent on others' opinions? If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and building authentic lives. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, you're not responsible for the family you were born into, but you are responsible for the life you build despite them. Choose wisely. Choose yourself. Choose freedom. Until next time, this is Amber signing off with love, hope, and the absolute certainty that you are already enough.